Said it will not be the easy way, but I found that to be true. Heaven holds so long. I found that there's no better place on earth than the road that leads to heaven. No place I'd rather be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No better place on earth than the road that leads to heaven. From all I've seen, I can say that out there's no better place on earth than the road that leads to heaven. No place I'd rather be. Yeah, yeah. No better place on earth than the road that leads to heaven. No better place to be. So, that is a true story, all right? 8 years old when my faith journey began. Now, back up just a little to give you the context for that. I grew up in a very musical environment. My dad is a great singer, a great guitar player. Still is, actually. He was playing music as early as I can remember. My earliest memories are of hearing my dad playing music, folk and bluegrass music, some of my favorite music in the world. That he was playing with his friends in a group called the Village Singers. And to this day, my dad, he's almost 80 years old. He's still, every day you can find him in Paducah at Chapman Music, his little music store there that he's had for many years, teaching guitar lessons, still to this day. And if you're ever in Paducah, stop by and see my dad. Tell him that his son sent you. But be careful, because he is also a very good salesman, and you will probably walk out of there with the guitar and you will not know why. I don't even play guitar. Why not buy a guitar? He's that good, so be careful. But he's a great musician, and so I grew up hearing my dad play music. He would write songs as well. He was an aspiring songwriter. He would write songs and then go to Nashville, a couple hours away from Paducah, and he would drive to Nashville and try to get his songs published and try to get them recorded by other artists. So he had a dream of, making it in the music business, and he was very, very good. And he would set up, he had a little recorder, little reel-to-reel tape recorder that he would set up in our kitchen at home. And his friends would come over and they would record songs, and my dad would record his songs. And anytime I heard the music playing, I would come running because I wanted to be right in the middle of it. So there I was, 3-year-old little Steve, and anytime my dad started playing his guitar, I wanted to be wherever the music was. That's where I was. So I would come running, every time. And so my brother, I have one older brother, one sibling, and everything I owned up until I was 20 years old was previously owned by my brother, hand-me-downs. And so my brother got a guitar. I was about 6 years old and he got this guitar, and I was so hoping that he wouldn't be very interested in it, because that meant that maybe it would become mine if he didn't really care that much about it. Sure enough, he played around with it for 2 or 3 days, and then he lost interest. And I was so excited, because I'm telling y'all, this was not just a guitar. This was the most epic, amazing guitar ever made, because it had a picture of Roy Rogers on the front of it. So I was like, this guitar, I will learn to play this guitar, and I'll be just like my dad. So I dragged it around the house with me. I took it to bed. I took it to the bathtub a couple of times. That was not a good idea, but it was, it wasn't a very good guitar, so it didn't destroy it, and I didn't really know how to play it. So finally, when I was 6 years old, my dad sat down with me one day at the kitchen table, where the music always happened in the kitchen, and he said, "All right, son, I'm going to teach you your first song on the guitar." And this is the very first song I learned on the guitar, my dad taught me. I that train coming, it's rolling around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know it. Now I'm struggling for some prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps on rolling on down to San Antonio. Johnny Cash, now you gotta love that. Yeah. Although one might wonder what the father is thinking when the first song he teaches his 6-year-old son on the guitar is a prison song. And if you're not wondering about it just yet, then just wait, because he taught me the second verse too. When I was just a young boy, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, and don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Dad, what are you thinking? I'm 6 years old, I don't know any better. I don't even think about what I'm singing. All I know is I have a song and the world needs to hear it. So like 8 hours a day, I'm just at the top of my lungs, you know, banging on that guitar, singing, I saw the man in Reno! The neighbors are just wondering what is going on in that house. So my mom is taking my brother and me to church every Sunday morning, trying to keep us out of prison, while my dad's singing, you know, teaching me how to get to prison with music. So, but we didn't, you know, the church is what you did on Sunday morning when you roll up in the buckle of the Bible Belt, as I did in Kentucky. And so it wasn't anything that was a part of our life outside of that little window of time on Sunday morning. We didn't talk about it or anything like that, but that's where Mom made sure that my brother and I were every Sunday. Dad was playing music late into the evening on Saturday night, so he was never going to church with us on Sunday. And our pastor, the pastor of Olivet Baptist Church, where we would attend, knew that my dad was sleeping in, and so he knew where our house was, and he would stop by on his way to church, our house, and he would sneak up to the bedroom window where my dad was sleeping. And I'm not making this up, he'd go, Chapman, get out of bed and come to church with your family. I think they call it door-to-window evangelism or something. It works because my dad did come to church. I was 7 years old, and I remember we had a revival. They said we're going to have a revival every night of the week. We're going to have a gathering, a service, but it wasn't going to be a preacher or an evangelist. It was going to be just people getting up and telling their story of how Jesus had changed their life. It was the power of story that first really made a change in my family. I think that's why I've loved story so much all these years, because what happened is by the end of that week, my dad came every night with us. And by the end of that week, I saw something. As a 7-year-old little boy, I started to see a transformation happen in my home. I started to notice that when the fighting and the fussing would start to happen, as it did often in my home, because my parents were a mess. My mom was 16 when she got married to my dad. My older brother came along very shortly after they got married. And so they had 2.5 strikes against them even making it. And I came along a few years later in the middle of all the craziness. And so there was a lot of fighting and fussing. And on top of all that, my dad had grown up without a father in his life. In fact, he had a lot of shame and a lot of anger in place of where a father would have been, because my dad's father left home when my dad was about 3 years old. And alcohol destroyed their relationship and ultimately destroyed his dad's life. And by the time my dad was 9 years old, his father had passed away. And he didn't know him. He met him twice. And I didn't even know this growing up because you just didn't talk about it. It was shameful even while I was growing up, all the years until just recently when my dad was able to tell me that he met his father twice, that he can remember on the playground of his elementary school, where a man would sort of just show up, a homeless man who was in very tattered clothes, appeared kind of off in the distance under a shade tree, and a kid ran over and said, hey, that man over there wants to talk to you. And my dad walked over, and this man introduced himself to my dad as his father. So you can imagine the shame and the confusion and the hurt that my dad was carrying around. So when fighting and fussing would happen in my home, my dad, be slamming doors and loud voices, and then my dad would leave. And my brother and I would, stand at the window and cry and wonder if he was going to come back, and he always did. But now, when that started to happen in my home, my dad, I remember him stopping and saying, wait a minute. Can we get on our knees together? And can we just pray? And can we just talk to God? And I would hear my dad talk to God and just say, Father, I don't know how to be a father. Will you please help me? I want to be a good dad to my sons. I don't want my sons to experience what I experienced. So will you please show me how to love them? Will you show me how to be a good husband to my wife? And then I'd hear my mom pray a prayer like that as well. And so I started to get to see forgiveness and repentance and grace modeled for me, and a relationship with God. So now we're going to church every Sunday together, and we're sitting together on the fourth pew, from the front. We're all there together as a family. Brother David doesn't have to bang on the window anymore to get my dad there. And we're there every Sunday. It's Sunday morning. I'm 8 years old now. Now I'm getting up to the song that I sang for you a minute ago. So I hear Brother David. He's preaching the sermon, and I don't remember anything about the sermon as an 8-year-old little boy, but I very clearly remember when he got to the end of the message, he said these words. He was quoting from Revelation. He said, Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And when he said that, I very clearly remember feeling my heart starting to beat. And I thought, he's knocking at my heart. He knocked on the door of my mom and dad's heart and my brother's heart, but now he's come to me. And so I'm nervous, but I'm excited, and I'm listening. I'm like, I can feel him knocking. So he says, Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone will open the door, so I'm like ready to open the door because he's knocking at my heart. And then because Brother David was a King James Version man, the next part of the verse says, if he opens the door, I will come in and sup with him. Well, he kind of lost me now because I didn't know what sup meant. I didn't know. I never heard that word before. And so my first thought was, Jesus was going to walk in and sup, Sorry, but that was the only sup I had any context for at that point. But what happened in the next few moments, and really what began then, was a relationship with Jesus. And you know what? I would come to realize that's actually what he's saying in that verse. He is kind of saying, I want to come be a part of whatever is up in your life. I want to be a part of whatever is going on. I want to have a meal with you. I want to sit down and just have a relationship with you. I realized this just recently reading the Bible. I love this about the scripture that's living and active, as it says. I've read this story many, many times, but I saw it for the first time that when Jesus calls Matthew to come and follow him, do you remember what he does? What's the first thing he says? Come follow me. Let's go have a meal together. Same thing he does with Zacchaeus when he calls him down from the tree, that I learned about shortly after this in Sunday school. And he says, we're going to your house, we're going to have a meal together. And Jesus is just saying, this is not about Sunday morning. It's not about religion. This is a relationship that I want to have with you every moment of your life. The big moments, the mundane things, the just daily, just having a meal. I want to be a part of all of it. And that's what began in my life at that point. So I started, going to church, going to Sunday school, and all of that, and reading the Bible. My family, we'd have our devotions around the kitchen table, and we'd read stories. And I love that Jesus called the fishermen were his first disciples. I remember finding that out and thinking, that's so cool, because when I was a little boy growing up out in the country, if I didn't have a guitar in my hands, I had a fishing pole in my hands. I loved going fishing with my best buddy, Tom Lindsay. And so we would be at the pond. So I thought, well, this is so cool, just like me. These were fishermen. And what I realized as I began to kind of look back at my story is so many of the songs that I've written over the years that have connected our lives together actually come from the seeds that were planted when I was a little boy. Even hearing some of these stories for the first time. Years later, I would actually write a song about those fishermen. It goes like this. Nobody stood and applauded them, so they knew from the start this road would not lead to fame. All they really knew for sure was Jesus had talked to them. He said, come follow me, and they came. Where the reckless abandoned Empty nets lying there at the water's edge. Told a story that few could believe and none could explain. How some crazy fishermen agreed to go where Jesus led, with no thought for what they would gain. For Jesus, they called my name, and they answered, we will abandon it all for the sake of the call. No other reason at all, but the sake of the call. Holy, devoted to live and to die, not for the sake of a creed or a cause, and not for a dream or a promise, but simply because it is Jesus who calls. If we believe, we'll obey and we'll answer. If you know it, sing it with me. We will abandon it all for the sake of the call. No other reason at all, but the sake of the call. Holy, devoted to live and to die for the sake of the call. For the sake of the call. Because music was such a big part of my family then growing up. My dad, as a real kind of an act of just wanting to pursue being the best father he could and husband, and knowing that chasing this